Once again, back to the QSC booth at Winter NAMM 2015. Glad you all could join us. Phil Sanchez here, and I got another special guest joining us on the QSC stage, as well as he is one of our K4 musician artists, and that is a skilled jazz drummer and rock drummer as well, Mr. Chad Wackerman. Very nice. Chad, how you doing today? And first of all, thank you for
Phil.
stopping by the QSC booth here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'd like to thank QSC as well as Roland V Drums for inviting me for this event.
Well, we appreciate you being here. My first question to you is, here we are, Winter NAMM. What are your thoughts? If you had an opportunity to walk around, see anything on the show floor, what grabs your attention when you come to NAMM?
Well, I'm much more in the drum world, obviously, as well as sound. But I mean, I do have a studio, so I'm really interested in sound as well. I was here yesterday, and there's lots of new innovations, drum-wise, and I'll even plug something. I have a product out. It's a signature brush, if you're interested. It's over at Innovative Percussion.
Sure.
And it's a brush that also has a mallet and a stick within the one brush. So it's kind of a unique thing over at Innovative if you're drummer.
All right, we'll be sure to make sure we'll talk about that again at the end. But
thanks.
You've had a pretty remarkable career, so I want to talk about that a little bit. Actually, let me go back because I think we need to set some groundwork, some ground stage, if you will.
Okay.
When you first started playing drums, was it something that you were interested in? Were you encouraged to do it? Was it a musical family that you came from? Tell us a little bit about your early musical upbringing.
I was very, very fortunate. My father's a music teacher and a drummer, percussionist, and he has taught for 56 years. He's still teaching.
Wow.
Teaches middle school jazz. He has a jazz band at middle school level, and they're great. He's an amazing teacher, but he started myself and my three brothers off as well. So it's a very musical family. All my brothers play. We're all drummers except for Bob, who's a bass player and producer.
Okay. Was it something that came naturally? I'm assuming it did because of just the family background.
It did. There were drums at the house, that helped. And Dad being a teacher was great because when we were really little kids, he started us off on the practice pad for a few years, learning rudiments and eventually graduating to the drum kit. I think it's a bit different now. Often people jump on the drum kit first, but he wanted to have us have some facility before we just kind of attacked it.
Very nice, very nice. What age, or did you always know you wanted to be a professional?
It was probably 5 or 6 when I started, and I think by the time I was 8, I was in 3rd grade and playing in Dad's jazz band, and I had the bug by then.
So tell me a little bit about those early playing days, those first days playing with your father, and the things that came afterwards through your teenage years, and then we can get into some of the other work.
I was really lucky to have parents that were so supportive. They loved the idea that we were myself and my brothers were pursuing music, but it was a serious thing. We need to study. It wasn't just a thing you did kind of halfway.
Okay.
So we were very encouraged to take lessons, and I was really fortunate to take with a couple master teachers, one being Chuck Flores, who I believe still teaches at MI here in Hollywood, and also is really, really fortunate to take from a man named Murray Spivak, who was Louis Belson's teacher, Shelly Mann's teacher, Joe Morella's teacher, a legendary guru teacher for hands and for orchestral reading. And he was also a very interesting character because he was, throughout his career, he had many careers, but he started in the 30s at RKO Pictures as a sound effects person, traps drummer, and then he was in charge of the sound department and went on to be one of the most important sound engineers for film. He recorded movies like Hello Dolly and tons of, I think has a list of like 10 Oscars that he had won sound for, so quite interesting character.
Good. If I have my notes correctly and I did my research correctly, about 1978, was that sort of when your first big break came, would you say, playing with trombonist Bill Waltrus, or?
Yeah, that was my first gig, was great jazz trombone player Bill Waltrus. We played in a small group and also a big band, and that rhythm section that was playing with his band went on to do a lot of other records and live gigs. We kind of worked as a rhythm section, drums, bass, guitar, and keyboards. The keyboard player got a lot of gigs being musical director, so he brought us on to a lot of other things.
Very nice. I'm sort of curious, though. You go from playing jazz and that sort of genre and you're very well known associated for your association with Mr. Frank Zappa. Tell us about that transition.
Well, I always loved various styles of music. I was playing rock as well. I did start as a jazz drummer, then switched to rock, which I think is a good transition. If you look back at the drummers in the 50s and 60s, they were basically all jazz drummers. I auditioned for Frank Zappa in 1981. It was an open audition. I found out just through a bass player friend of mine, Kevin Brandon, who had auditioned. He didn't get the gig and told me about Frank wanting to, needing a drummer and a bass player in 1981. So got up my nerve and called him. He answered the phone and organized a audition time, which ended up being 3 days long. But it was a pretty intense audition. But after the 3 days, they offered me the job.
Wow. So 3 days, was it like 3 days? Tell us about that 3 days.
Well, the first day was reading music. And if you don't know anything about Frank Zappa, look him up because he's one of our most important American composers, classically and as well as rock, and as well as a very inventive rock guitar player. So on the stand, on the audition, he had all the hardest classical pieces. A piece called The Black Page. He had a piece called Moe and Herb's Vacation, a Drowning Witch interlude, the hard part. Maybe about 4 or 5 pieces that were completely classical. We wrote on the staff for bass drum snare, 4 toms, 3 rototoms, castanets, cowbell, a ride cymbal, 2 crashes, and a china cymbal, all scored out with polyrhythms and very unusual odd groupings and odd time signatures.
And so the process was over 3 days, just playing various.
Well, the audition was organized in stages, so you had to pass the stage of reading the music, number 1.
Okay.
And then I didn't read it perfectly, but he thought I had potential because I could read some of it correctly as sight reading, and other parts I needed to work on. So we did that, then we played a bunch of odd time signatures, like things in 7, 11, 13, 21, and then all the styles you could think of: ska, heavy metal, bebop, a lot of Latin styles, New Orleans rock, all sorts of interesting stuff. Then he superimposed the weird time signatures to various styles. And then after that, he put on his guitar, and we did kind of power trio improvisation, because he wanted to see how the drummer that he was, auditioning would react to the way he played, and if he liked it or not. Because you can get to that stage where you're reading the music and playing the grooves right, but if the chemistry isn't right between the leader or the soloist and the drummer, it's not really going to work. So that was a big part of it. So that kind of ended the first day, which was probably about 4 hours, and then he offered actually he had kind of the nucleus of the band already worked out with Steve Vai and Tommy Mars, Ed Mann, and Ray White. And then later on, Bobby Martin, who's right over here, joined us. Also amazing musician. So that was the nucleus of the band. So he was trying to fit a bass player and drummer into that world. And his music was very involved. You had to be very disciplined, very dedicated, and it was a ball just jumping into that world, because it was a huge learning experience too. He stretched everybody.
Okay, very nice. I want to ask you about QSC product. You're a fairly new.
Very new. I've had the K10 speakers for a couple weeks now.
Okay.
And I've got them set up with my V-drum set up in my studio, and I'm got to say I'm loving them. It's great to have so much power in such a small box. I don't know how you do that.
Magic.
But I know with other speakers, you definitely have a threshold where it's not efficient anymore, and it's usually with the bass drum, the low end sounds. But I'm really enjoying these. There's tons of headroom, and it's small package. I think they're brilliant.
So mainly in the studio right now, practicing. Is that pretty much how you've used them?
That's how I've used them the last 2 weeks.
So tell me, do you have plans to take them out on the road or going to gigs or?
Well, I could locally. The next tour I have is going to be in Europe, so typically you have to use gear that's supplied there. And but it would be great to take them on the road, because typically what happens is you're playing through different monitors every night with different EQ curves and a different, it's very challenging each night. And I've been on some tours where the monitors are just so bad we decide not to use them.
So would it be fair to ask, are you going to specify that as part of your rider requirements?
Well, I'll ask. They'll give you a call, see if you can help out.
Very nice. How about any plans to use them for other things, or is just...
Well, it's tempting. I mean, the tone is so good, even from the V drums. And as you can tell, I like to use melodic instruments sounds as well. I try to push the V drums into more a fun thing where you can play melodies and sort.
So what was your rig, or at least the loudspeaker portion of your rig before? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
For electronics?
Yes, for the electronics.
It's exactly this. The V drums, often with an octapad as well, plus a sample pad, which has all sorts of custom samples on it.
And the loudspeaker system you were using, was you using something that was...
Usually headphones. But I'm hearing them through the speakers, you get more air, it's more fulfilling.
Okay.
It's not so tight and closed in. I like speakers better, I really do.
Very nice. Well, do you have a moment to give us another little sample of your work?
Sure. I think we have limited time, so I might just play a little bit of a solo.
Sure, just a little bit of a solo. That'd be great. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Chad Wackerman.
Thank you very much.
Very nice, Chad. We're almost out of time here. Before we let you go, what are you working on now? What's coming up?
Well, I actually just finished a tour with Robert in Europe. It was a Zappa alumni band called Band from Utopia. And I'm going to go to Indonesia for a few days for a keyboard player, Indonesian keyboard player project with Jimmy Haslip. And then I'll be in Europe for about 3 weeks in mid-March to April with Jennifer Batten and Stu Ham.
Okay.
It's a new kind of power trio that we have.
All right, very nice. And also we've got the new signature drums.
The brush, yeah.
Brush mallets again, and who's making those?
Innovative Percussion.
Innovative Percussion. So if you guys are here on the show floor, you want to go check those out, go over to the drum hall, check out Brad's new signature brushes. And anything else you want to add today?
I just want to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate it, and want to thank QSC, Phil, and all the guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hey.